you'll relax gradually as you get onto it. And I think we just want to talk, because we've been promising to do this for several years now.
How long? Yeah.
Telling me about, where do you start? You will know about your life and work and knowledge of the mill. When did you all both start working there?
I started in 1976.
And I started in 1978.
Yeah, and that's a funny story as to how I
got the job. I didn't apply for a job. I wasn't looking for a job at the time.
I was going back to work on my bike, because I only had a bike then, and she was at the mill stream with her kids. I shouted across, "Do you want a job?" She shouted back, "Yes," and that was it. So she got a job. And we worked together from 1970, whenever, what time did it? 78, to when I finished.
Well, we both finished together, didn't we, at the offices?
Yes, in 2000 and...
Can't remember.
Anne?
Oh, because I'm trying to work out.
Yeah.
2000 and...
When did the mill close then?
Well, the mill till it shut, but we went to the offices.
Shut in 1995, but we moved down to the offices to do the bookwork for the pigs. And then eventually finished with Midland Pig in, so I was 73, so 2013.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So tell me about life at the mill. What sort of things you did? What it was like as a place to work? How it changed?
It was absolutely lovely place to work, because we were on our own down there, and we had all the wildlife to ourselves, didn't we?
Yeah.
And people just left us alone. We answered to head office, but we didn't see them very often, and
got on with the job.
Yeah, mainly when I first started, they dealt with dairy farms as well as pig farms, because they'd only got one pig farm. But then when I'd been there for a while and Sue had joined, they'd bought more pig farms, so we just ended up making our own pig food. And that was made from local grain. Jeff Malabar, etc. would bring their barley in.
Mr. Tipper.
Absolutely mad at harvest time, because they all wanted to bring it in at the same time. And then we had to fetch soya, etc. from the docks. But we tried to do them, we'd deliver to farms on the way and then bring soya back, so obviously it was a well-paid load.
So tell me about some of the people who worked there. I'm guessing a lot were local. Any sort of characters in particular?
Yeah, well, Gio was the main character, but he was a really good worker. But obviously you had to have a bit of time and patience, and when they decided that everybody had got to have a forklift truck licence, the bloke who came to train them said, "I'm going to have trouble with that one." I said, "You won't, he'll be the best, because he will concentrate and listen to everything you say. He's the most safe driver we've got in this yard. He doesn't take risks." Yeah, we had our characters in time, didn't we?
Yes, we certainly did.
We had some bit rough ones that we had to get rid of, that decided it would be okay to go back when we'd gone home and maybe help themselves to a few bags of food for their mate down the road.
But when we finished, we had some real good workers, and they didn't let us down. They stopped till the bitter end, clearing everything up, and helped Anne no end, because she was manager then.
So how did it feel? How did the news come to you that they were going to close the mill?
Well, we had rumours a long time before it closed. Every now and again there'd be rumours that, and there'd be somebody come round, like Mr. Jackson would have sent somebody round, and you'd go out and say, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm just having a look round," which was not good for the staff. But I always promised them that we knew it would go eventually. And I always promised them that once it was definite, they would be the first to know. So I said, stop listening to the rumours and getting all upset. And then eventually I got the call to head office. I knew what I was going to be told. So I had to come back and tell them that unfortunately we were definitely going.
And Sue, what did you think when you got the news?
Well, as Anne said, we knew it was coming, but it was very strange the last time all the machinery switched off, because always there was the hum of the machinery, and even from our house I could hear it, and then it was switched off, and that was it. It was like dead really, wasn't it?
And just Sue
There was
and
just
I
me and
there.
Anne there in this creaky old building.
So what was the process of of sort of clearing the place out?
Well,
and-
they had a sale, so what we had to do, we had to keep making food, but not ordering any raw materials in. So for the last couple of weeks, the pigs did have a rather strange diet.
Was anything we got left to put in it?
We had to keep ordering the diet, but then it was put up for sale, auction, and everything was sold off by auction.
And then we had the trauma of everybody coming in and fetching the machinery, which was dreadful, because the health and safety was, well, Anne was absolutely tearing her hair out trying to keep them under control, because there were all sorts of people coming for it. So
One farmer lowering a big heavy bin from the top of the mill to the bottom with binder twine. And just as I said you can't do that, it crashed down.
it was rather a nightmare, but
Unfortunately, farmers take risks. They're
Yeah.
the worst breed out for taking risks.
Can you tell me about the wooden flat bottom boat that's
well, that got washed up I mean, it must have been lurking about somewhere for a long time, but we had a flood and it washed it up. I don't know who decided that it was worth looking at. Who?
I think we decided to get in touch with the man who used to write the canal books.
yes,
Yes,
They
that's
used
it.
to be
Harry
at the
Arnold.
mill.
They had offices at the mill at one time. Yes, Harry Arnold.
Yeah, you got in touch with him, didn't you?
Yeah, and he said, oh yes, that's worth conserving, you know. So it went off to the Waterways Museum at Ellesmere, didn't it?
So can you tell me what it was?
Well, we presume, looking at the pictures you'd got of the ones that were cutting the reeds and the weed, it looks exactly the same sort of boat as that. So we presume that's what it must have been.
Yeah, because every now and again they'd come and they'd put rope across the mill stream, and then they'd go along in that punt thing, cutting it. Then it would float down till it got to the rope, and then they gathered it up from there.
So what year was that when they were still gathering the reeds?
Well, in my memory, in my childhood, so in the 40s they were still doing it.
But they didn't do it when we were at
We
the mill.
used to go and play on the punt because they'd moor it by the mill stream, and us kids would go and play on it when they weren't there.
Tell me about the eel traps. What you can remember?
Well, it was always there. It was always there. Everybody just accepted it, didn't they?
Yes.
And one day we were looking out of our boardroom window, and the farmer who was renting the fields at the time had got a large digger and was about to attack it. So Anne and I ran in high heel shoes down Statfold Lane shouting stop, stop, but it was too late. And we suspect he just wanted the large sandstone blocks that were on the edge of it, and so
That had been there since Doomsday.
so
But when I was young, we used to paddle there because the river, the whole idea was the river washed through it. Well, the eels like to browse in the warm, shallow water, so they'd go into it and then they couldn't get out. So, and it was a nice paddling spot when I was a kid because it was warm water, and there was a plum tree right by.
yeah, damsons they were.
The damsons.
Yeah, they were on what got left when the river was when they took the floodgates out. The river rerouted itself and left the damson trees on like a little island, didn't it?
Yes, and they used to get to the eel trap, you see, over the floodgates when the millers went, well, as my book said, the millers would go and collect the eels by walking across the floodgates. When the floodgates were removed,
It was
you couldn't
just
get to the eel trap
stranded there
anyway.
on its own.
Shame.
But it was very important because it was mentioned in the Doomsday book, and as that lady said who came to give us a talk, it was
Yeah.
the only one she'd heard of.
Yeah.
I mean, what a wonderful feature it would have been
I
for the
did
village
try
now,
and
wouldn't
I
it?
tried to get industrial archaeology society's interest. Nobody was. They just said we haven't got any money, and that was it. But to see it go like that was
Oh,
awful.
it was awful.
We could have done a lottery bid for that now.
We
couldn't
could have done, Peter.
Yeah.
It
What
would
a
have,
shame. So when was
Yeah.
that? In the 80s, you said, wasn't it?
That would be in the 80s when they
Yeah.
took it away, yeah.
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 So going back to the mill, you can say this, but I won't necessarily use it. What do you think of the mill cotton close development now?
I think it's very sad. And it's not just that one, gating yourself away from the village. I think that is so sad, because this isn't a
secular.
Yeah, and also it's a safe village really. We don't have a lot of problems, do we? Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's like, oh, this is us and that's you. I do feel that strongly.
It is a shame
really.
that a big part of the village is still there, but you can't.
Yes,
you can't
we couldn't even get down. My cousin's keen on photography, but we couldn't get down for her to do a photograph of the mill as it is now, because you couldn't get anywhere near.
Yeah, it's a shame. Okay, thinking about things more generally, I'm thinking about how things have changed, because obviously you've got a lot of history in the village between you, and so it's always good to get a gauge on how things are different now. So I know it's a big spread of things, but in a general sense, how do you think the village has changed certainly since the beginning of the 21st century?
The biggest change, we discussed this yesterday, is the fact we've suddenly become this village where everybody wants to live, and the developers have cottoned on, and they are building houses that are going to get them a lot of money. So they're building large houses, expensive houses, and to me you're changing the balance in the village of the types of people that we've had here. When I was young, it was very much a working class village with a few what we call toffs. And then it was nice really, because up to 2000 it changed slowly. So we had a mixture of houses. We had all these estates that were still ordinary people, as I call them, but then since 2000, because it's become all of a sudden it's the place to live, but you can only do it if you've got a lot of money. So even this estate at the back here, with 2 bedrooms, so-called affordable housing, isn't affordable to the likes of what my children could have afforded. They can afford it now they're older, but they couldn't when they first left home.
That most of the children born in the village couldn't afford to live here, so you know they've all.
And I think it's sad that we've not got that really good tapestry of different people, different levels, different education, because that's what makes a village. We're going to end up with all old people like us that were here before it all went sky high, and then quite affluent people.
What about the community aspects of things, though? Things that happen, because you were talking earlier about making things for the festival and for so on. How about the community in terms of what it does and how it gets together? How do you think that's
I think there's quite a lot of things that have taken off, if you like. I mean, you see different things at different ages, because like when we first came here, we had our children, we went to the playgroup, we got to know people there. Then they went to scouts and guides, and we got to know people there, and you know, and
we went to the pubs.
Yes,
very much so.
Yes, yeah, you know, you see, as I say, you see things at different stages, but we now are like the drop-in where you came on Monday. You know, there's a good community there, and a good mix of people, aren't there?
What
really?
we feel is a lot of it is down to the hard work of the few, such as you and Paula and Sally and Elaine. It is quite a few people that are doing this. Needs to expand a bit more with a few younger people.
I don't think some of the people who've come recently are as involved as we used to be when we were younger.
We feel they're more transient. It's only going to be here while the next job comes up. Yeah, which is true. A lot of people now don't have a job for life, do they, like we did?
I think it's true as well that that what you're saying. I mean, when we moved here in our late 20s, early 30s, we moved here because we wanted to be involved, and eventually we did get involved with things.
Yes.
To me, it's not worth moving to a small community if you're not going to be involved with stuff. Really.
No. A lot of people are just commuters. They like it at weekends because it's a lovely village, and then they're at work all the week, and sometimes don't even shop in the village, or you know, which is sad really, because we need to keep everything going.
But there must be things that are better than they were sort of 25, 30, 40 years ago. What do you think has improved in the
Well,
village?
the bypass has helped an awful
Oh,
lot.
yes.
It was horrendous when our kids used to go down to school at the old school and have to walk up Main Street, and the lorries were just thundering through. You know, that has made a big difference
The
to us.
A38 was horrendous.
Oh, the A38 was dreadful. When you had to cross over by Leasley's, it was. Well, you took your life in your hand every time, didn't you?
And also we're grateful for the Arboretum. Sue and I spend a lot of time at the Arboretum.
And it has been our saviour over the last overlocking. You know, we've been going down all the time. It was open, even when we had to sit outside and eat our sandwiches in the freezing cold. And
Tell me what you remember about the development of the Arboretum, because that's been about 22
well, I mean,
years.
Anne was going down there since it was a. Well, they were her friend's son was building the chapel. So
The first thing we heard, we were in a little conservation society, weren't we? And we had these plans come to look at for it, and you sort of thought, what's it all about? We didn't understand it really, did we?
no, we never thought it would take off, to be honest.
But then my friend's son started to work on it, so on a Sunday we used to take him his breakfast, and it was just a mud bath. It just was a mud bath, and you thought, what are they going to make out of this? And the first thing they built was the chapel, and then
the polar bear was there.
The polar bear was there, and the chapel.
It's okay, just check something.
And
Right,
then,
yes.
and then they built the visitor centre bit, and obviously it grew up from there. But never in a million years did I think in 20 years' time it would be like it is.
It is fantastic now. It's really lovely.
Yeah, I think it's...
And it has put all of us on the map, even though they can't say it. You know, nobody had ever heard of us before, but with all the things that go on there, you know, and they being on the television quite a lot.
Do you feel the A38 sort of makes it so it's almost Alrewas, but not quite?
Yes.
It's a shame we can't have a footbridge, because we see a lot of people walking and they say, how do we get to the Arboretum? And we have to explain that they'll have to walk all the way around or take their lives in their hands to get there. Because, I mean, really it's a spit in a cough from me, isn't it, really? But unfortunately we have to go in the car because we can't walk all that way round.
And we don't want to go across the A38.
Well, you wouldn't want... I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't even attempt it in the daytime. I mean, it's great in lockdown because there are no cars, are there? So I think we crossed the road a couple of times then, but I wouldn't
I've done it on a Sunday morning, but that's
you might
the
just
only
about
time.
get away with it. And
Yeah.
So what about you obviously both worked at the mill. What about other businesses, how things have changed, you know, shops and pubs and so on?
Well, this is the other thing is, we've got no farms left. They were quite a good source of employment, particularly for the ordinary lads when they left school with no qualifications. And we had a lot of shops. You could virtually buy anything in this village. And obviously they've gone slowly. We've got no paper shop anymore. I mean, the paper shop was brilliant because you could get absolutely everything, couldn't you?
Stationery and
yeah,
all sorts.
No post office except for the corner of the chemists. We had a post office that was also a shop. The Barkers, each end of the village, one was greengrocery and things, and then this end was everything, wasn't it?
Peter,
groceries, wine
and stuff. Yeah.
But now we've just got the co-op really and the butchers.
Yeah. We had
the forecourt sells a lot that people don't realise. You can get a bucket and a spade and a mop from there.
yeah, we had Johnson's Transport, didn't we?
Yeah,
Harry Johnson's Transport, which quite a few people in the village worked there. And as you say, the farms, there were quite a few.
And builders' yards, I guess a lot of
yeah,
people...
well, that's it. Mays Yard, down Mays Alley, and
Wards, Mays, Kents, Bannisters, all employed local people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at one time people didn't need to work outside of the village because there was so much going on, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And we had a very good bus service though. I mean, on a Saturday it was every 20 minutes.
And you could get to
Birmingham.
Burton, Birmingham, Derby, everywhere, couldn't you?
Yeah.
It was great.
It's incredible.
Yeah, now you can't.
Is there anything, trying to look on the positive side of things, that is better than it used to be 20, 30 years ago?
I'm a bit biased really, aren't I?
I suppose there must be, but...
There must be, but unfortunately, as all us older villagers think, you can't help but think of what it used to be. You know, you'd come home from school and you'd walk home from school totally safe, you'd go in the neighbours to go and play with your friends, and I feel now you can't, the children
it's not
can't...
just here, is it?
No, everywhere's the same, isn't it? The children
the whole
can't...
world's changed. So.
They haven't got the freedom the children haven't got that I had. I was never in.
Or even that our children had, because,
Yeah.
I mean, our children would go out in the morning, you never worried, because if they were being naughty, somebody would come and tell you, and if anything happened, somebody would come and tell you, you know, so no mobile phones or anything. So.
Even then, we all knew each other from going to school to take the children to school, didn't we?
Yeah.
You see, nobody walks to school with the children now. They take them in the car, they drop them off, so presumably they don't get to know each other like we did. We'd walk back along the estate together, wouldn't we? And
yeah.
So tell me some of your standout memories of childhood or when you first moved in, you know, things like the people who are here, or just the physical, what the village was like, the shops and you know, businesses and so on, and what it was like being a child here all those years
wonderful.
ago.
Wonderful. In the summer, the first thing you thought, if it was a nice day, was you came home from school, you got your swimming costume on your bike and down to the river, down Stackfold Lane straight to the river. So that was our gathering spot, was the river. The boys are diving off the bridge, and if it was icy, Mr. McKnight had come out of the school and tried the canal, and if it was okay, he'd let us go on the canal. We had such freedom. You'd go and you'd take your fishing line and go and fish in the mill stream. Nobody bothered you, nobody said, have you got a licence? You just went and did it. And you just then, another day you'd get on your bike and bike to Catton, to look at the Bluebell Wood at Catton. That was one of my favourite things. Oh, the bluebells are out, and off we'd go. And my uncle was bailiff at Fradley Junction, so a lot of my childhood was at Fradley Junction because it was wartime. And my dad was away in the army the whole of the war, abroad, so I was whizzed off to Fradley Junction every weekend, and we walked up the canal and we walked back, and I was only 3 or 4. Then I learned to ride a bike, so then we would bike the back way. Yeah, I had an idyllic childhood.
What brought you to Whitehouse, Sue?
Well, it was when we got married and we were looking for a house, and it was what we could afford at the various places. We looked at Tamworth, Burntwood, you know, Barton, all round, and
Right.
and we liked Whitehouse Village, so we decided on this. So that was it. My husband couldn't get over the fact that, because he was brought up in Birmingham, he couldn't get over the fact that everybody spoke to you. You know, he thought it was rather strange, but yeah, everybody was very friendly. You know, there was no animosity about us being newcomers, if you like. It was great.
She lived down Mickleham then, and what we did once a month, us mothers used to have a little coffee evening together, take it in turns to have a little coffee evening while husbands babysat. So, and anybody knew, we'd just say, would you like to come to the coffee evening once a month? And that's how we really got all friendly, wasn't it? And stayed friendly, and then you've got somebody to help you with the children if you need it.
It's really interesting what you say about you came here because you couldn't afford anywhere else. It was the same with us.
Well, I lived in Sutton, you see, and there was absolutely no chance that we could get a house in Sutton.
I mean, we were looking in Lichfield initially, and then when we found out about our house, it was, well, not a lot cheaper, but it was cheaper than houses in Lichfield.
Mm.
And now it would just be completely the opposite.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we couldn't afford one of the ones that were over the road in Mickleham because they were £200 more, and we couldn't do that.
Right.
So
what year did you move in?
1968.
68.
And me.
Right.
But Anne had been here before. She went
so
away and came back.
That's when I moved to live here,
Right.
in this house.
So they must have been new by then, wouldn't they? Were they was it a brand new
5
house?
years old when I moved in, yeah.
So where did you live as a kid?
I lived here,
No, Furlong Lane you lived.
Furlong Lane, sorry.
Right.
I lived in Furlong Lane.
She lived where I live now, you know, in the same road
I
as
was
I live.
born in Furlong Lane, and Nurse Cluley delivered me, as she delivered all the babies. But then when I got married, we were looking for somewhere, and we couldn't afford at the time to live here, so we went to live at Walton for a short time. But I always wanted to come home, obviously. So as soon as we could afford it, I came home.
And there was no issue, you were talking about these houses being new, because they were all built as semis then, weren't they?
Yeah.
So it wasn't...
Well, where I lived down the other part, that was the last bit to be built. That was an extra bit. It wasn't built at the same time as these. They kept sticking bits on.
But they were semi-detached houses,
Yeah.
which were affordable by
we had
people, weren't they?
in the end bit where I lived, they were all semi-detached except one on the end, which was detached, and that was it.
Whereas now, as you say, the default is to build a
It is. They
4
do.
or 5 bedroom house,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed how they're squeezing them in. I mean, those 3 down Fox Lane, we've had a bet that when they take all the hoarding down, we can walk along the pavement and touch their bay window.
And they're so close as well, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, look at these were considered, cheaper houses, but we all got
Look at
plenty
the
of
land we've
space.
got.
Yeah, oh gosh,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, the people who moved into ours built on the side because we were on the end, and it's twice the size it was.
And do you know how much those are in Fox Lane?
700,000.
700,000.
I know. It's
If I was paying 700,000 and want a detached house in
in the
half
middle of
acre
a
land-
field,
And me.
yeah.
And me, but they see where they've come from, that's cheap.
Yeah.
That the lady next door but one that's moved into the house next door, that I thought he would never sell for what he was asking for, she came from London. So she
You
thought
sell a
that was
house in London,
she
you can
thought that was a
afford it,
bargain.
So what did that go for in the end?
Over 300,000.
300
I'm not sure exactly how
Yeah.
much he was asking.
370?
No, I think he was asking about 330.
Crazy.
We got this for 3.5. Can't get a car for that now, can you?
Not
No.
a decent one. No.
And actually, my grandson had paid that for a bike, because he's into bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Crazy, isn't it? Really.
Mind you, we've still got Coates and Butchers, which I think is quite...
Yes,
a
it
thing.
is,
Do you
and a
remember
lot of-
that in its early days?
people come
Yes.
from miles around to Peters.
I
don't
can
they?
remember when it was just a big wooden slab. The counter was a big wooden, and it was all indented where he'd chopped the meat, so he had chopped it away, and you got served by Mr. Coates, but Mrs. Coates sat at the end in a high chair taking the money, and he was a bit soft. You could say, "Can I have a few bones for the dog?" and he'd sneak them in. But if she saw it, she soon charged you for the bones. She was in charge. Good old Percy, he was a lovely, lovely man. Lovely man. The same as Mr. Fisher, the postmaster. He was a lovely man as well. So we did have some lovely shops.
I mean, Mr. Barker was a gentleman, wasn't
Yeah,
he? He was
old
lovely.
Mr. Barker, Mr. and Mrs. Barker,
Yeah.
they were lovely as well.
I just want to ask you about sort of big things that have happened in the village, and thinking about what the response of the village was to COVID. What was your experience of how?
I think it was brilliant.
Our gripe was the fact that people were coming from outside the village and coming into the village and walking around where, we were all trying to keep safe, and we'd got people coming in from elsewhere. But everybody was brilliant, really, weren't they?
Yeah, and I think a good asset to the village is the coffee shop, because we hadn't had one for a long time. And so if you just wanted it, particularly if people came walking and they just wanted a cup of coffee, you had to go in a pub. Whereas it's great, and that's a nice community centre, and of course that's where they dealt with the COVID from, wasn't it? Where they sorted out taking stuff around to people.
They were brilliant. They bought bags of goodies, if you like, just to cheer you up, if you like. And obviously they collected the food and stuff there and distributed it.
Other villages were jealous of us. When you mentioned it to your friends, say, "Oh, don't do that where we live." So yeah. It was
Yeah,
good,
I
that
think
was.
it's right. I think if you need help, people are there to help, aren't
Yeah.
Having that phone number was brilliant.
they?
Yeah.
You talked earlier about the pubs. How have the pubs changed over the years?
Well, they've changed, the tenants have changed a lot. At one time it was the same person for years and years, so everybody got used to them. You got used to what you drank, you didn't have to ask when you walked
No.
in. It was
Everybody had their set place.
and yeah, everybody had their set.
Mr. Cork standing on the corner in the George and Dragon, and
Don't you dare sit in their seat. A bit like the church, really. Don't you dare sit in their seat. But
and if you were a regular in one and you strayed to another, you sort of, what are they doing in here, you know?
and they all had outdoors
Yes.
where you could go. Children could go and get some pop and some crisps, but they don't have that anymore, do they? They don't have outdoors.
So, what do you think of the pubs now?
Well, they're not the same, because I think the breweries have had a lot to do with it as well. You know, those that I mean, look at Mary and Stanbrook. I mean, her family had it for years, and the pools at the Crown, which you would remember, I presume. Yeah. You know, it was sort of a family thing, and you got to know the landlord well. But then all of a sudden, when the breweries started putting rents up or whatever, the landlords changed and had different ideas. Like navigation, that changed into a sort of gastro pub thing, and it never worked, and it was never going to work here.
No. Well, they tried that at the Crown for a short while, didn't they? Made it a bit like a bistro with high stools, and it doesn't work in a village.
No, well, we've heard yesterday that the landlady's left again at the
I
Crown.
see that.
It's been up and down for a few years now, that has.
Well, we always used to, when there was a new landlord or lady, we'd always take them a bunch of flowers and a card saying welcome, but it got to the point where it was every few months,
It cost you a
so,
bit in flowers.
so we gave up.
Yeah, it cost you a fortune in flowers.
But I mean, the Williams not changed an awful lot, has it?
No.
It's been, that's always been a fairly basic. I mean, it was a good drinkers pub when we first came here. You know, it was.
And actually, most of the old villagers go there, don't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
They don't, because everybody's got fed up with the Crown, because it'd be shut, you'd go and it would be shut, and or we've gone and they've not had any food.
No, and I went and the chef had changed, and they hadn't got half the stuff on the menu, and yeah, I took some people there. You know, this is it. You want somewhere reliable, really.
I think what having lived by the Crown for so many years, they just don't get the village. I think that's the thing.
No, that is
No.
the thing, and the people at the William do.
Yes.
They
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
They know their clientele.
I mean, when we moved in, it was Peter Poole
Yeah.
who was there. Who, you know, we could hear him
Yes.
laughing from our house.
Yes.
I
A
should
very
think so.
loud laugh.
I've had a few lock-ins there. Shouldn't be
Yeah,
saying
he told me
this.
not to trim the bushes.
Shouldn't be saying this on
Yes,
the
no, no.
camera.
Well, the William used to have a lot of lock-ins as well.
He said, "Don't trim those trees too much because there's a
No.
police drive down." But then, I mean, there were quite a few nice ones. But Brian McAvoy, when he came, he
Yes,
really,
he was nice.
he
wasn't
really understood about
Yes.
being part of the community. But
Yeah.
since him, there's been,
No.
and when they changed the place, it's just sort of, there's just nobody going there. No villagers go there.
No.
No, and that's what you've got. It's all right having passing trade, but that's only really in the summer and what have you. You need your regulars all year round. And as I say, the William seems to have hit the happy medium. And the George and Dragon...
Hopefully that will settle now, won't it?
Yeah.
But that hasn't changed. I know they've done it up a bit, but it hasn't changed massively, has
No.
it, over
No,
the
it hasn't.
years?
No.
Still
that
feel
went-
very comfortable going in
Yeah.
there. You know, there's a lot... If you're on your own or if you're just ladies, you know, sometimes some pubs aren't very...
Yeah.
not welcoming, but you know, you don't
Yeah, I know
feel
what you mean.
comfortable in it.
Mm.
But
We went to the George and Dragon on a Friday dinner time for how many years?
must have been 30 odd
30 years. Every Friday dinner time.
Come rain,
We
snow.
went, met up with a lady from up the cul-de-sac in her dinner hour. We did that for one of our managers from one of the farms, and we did that all weathers. We never missed, did we?
No, from
For
when we were at
30
the mill,
years.
and then when we moved up to the offices and went every Friday.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's nice to have them. It's really nice to have them, because you do feel if anybody comes and you want to go out for a meal, there is somewhere you can go that's reasonable. And the deli divan is very nice. I mean, some people aren't into Indian, but they've been very community minded, and they've tried very hard, you know, and I've been a few times, and the meals have always been very good.
Yeah.
And they're very polite. And
Oh yeah, I mean they've managed to keep going as well, which is great, isn't it, for them? That's good.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to talk about generally? I've sort of exhausted my questions, but anything you want to lay down on record about anything to do?
The canals have got a lot busier, that's another thing. You know, you'd see a few boats. I mean, I used to go down nearly every day with the kids, and you'd see a few boats, and it was an event to see the lock open and shut. But now they're you know, with the advent of them being used for holidays, there's a lot more boats on the canal.
And marinas, because there wasn't any marinas, was there?
No.
So like Barton Marina, I mean that's huge now, isn't it?
Mm.
And the new one up towards Fredley.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you see that as a good thing, the canal traffic?
Yes, because it keeps the canals open, and they are such a part of our history that they need to be kept open. And plus the fact that there are societies which have opened ones that have been shut for years, and you know, that's brilliant. Too much of our history has gone down the pan and nobody's noticed. So yes,
Usually when we walk up the canal, they usually chat to you, don't they? We often stop and have a chat to them. And it's nice those that are coming that sell things as well. So they'll be here for a short while.
The one who did the cakes and...
Yeah, the cake and... But there was also a lady... Well, I bought a blanket for my great-granddaughter from her. She was doing crochet stuff. They were here, and the man comes doing
metalwork.
Metalwork, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think they're brilliant.
And it certainly adds to the village atmosphere, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about the Always show? How's that changed, do you think?
Tremendously, really, because when I was young it was an agricultural show with everything, pigs, sheep, cows, you name it, and it was going from very early in the morning till late at night. Then we had a show dance in the village hall, but now it's mainly, in my opinion, a bit more like a gymkhana really. There's a lot to do with the horses more now, but then see, foot and mouth really paid to it for a while, because obviously the farmers, and then we lost the farms, so there's nobody to bring the animals anyway.
But it's good that it's kept going, because so many of these things have folded because of really people with the enthusiasm to keep it going. And we seem to have got people who are enthusiastic, and I mean, I don't know how many, what number are we on now?
140 this year.
Yeah, I thought it was.
The Shire Horse side's nice, isn't it?
It's
nice
lovely,
to walk around looking at. And the cars, you see that's changed, it's cars now, not more than agricultural stuff.
And
but
tractors.
it's just changed, hasn't it? The balance has changed, but it's still nice.
I think what happened was there was a period, because it nearly folded,
Yes, I think so.
because there were a couple of bad years.
Yeah.
And then when it came back, it was more like a carnival. But because I'm on the committee, so the desire is to get it more of an agricultural show, but realising that people want to come along and buy food.
You've got to appeal to everybody.
I tell you the thing that I miss the most is the tea tent. The WI used to run a tea tent, didn't they? And that's what it's great to go and sit in the tea tent and have a piece of cake and a drink, like, you know. So I do miss that.
I take that as a suggestion.
Well, yes, we've been suggesting
we do miss it, because the thing is that there's caterers outside, but if it's sunny it's too hot, and if it's raining you can't. So we were crowded into one little tent, weren't we, the one year when you won your tractor thing?
Yes.
We were really crowded into that little tent to get a cup of coffee, weren't we? Yeah. So I do feel that, but I don't know, perhaps they struggle to get somebody to run it now.
Well, there's no WI for a start office, and we haven't got the
and a lot of it is
power to do it.
You've got to conform to so many rules and regulations. You can't just make a cup of tea these days. You've got to have some sort of certificate to say that you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, I really like the show, and I've been every year.
Yes, I do.
Except perhaps one or two, but you know, I wouldn't miss it.
We've been unfortunate with the weather a few times, haven't we? That's all. But
and what about the Orus Arts Festival, which started in 2006?
I
think that's brilliant, and that you mentioned that to other villagers, they're really jealous.
Well, they come from other villages. I mean, somebody I was talking to over at Tamworth came to it, because I said something about Orus. She said, "Oh, I come to the arts festival." She said.
Yeah, so, I think it's brilliant,
and it does bring a lot of people to do things that they hadn't even thought of doing, perhaps, and it started up quite a few groups, I think, over the years.
Well, we started to go to Sally's things on a Sunday afternoon, and she, you know, we started to do things we've never done before. So, I'll show you how to do that, and off you go. And it's all with stuff that you probably would have thrown away. I mean, we were doing old DVDs, weren't we? And using all your old wool up doing DVDs, and it's brilliant.
But I mean, we sat in Sally's garden making the pom-poms were terrific. We had a tent full of pom-poms. I took a picture of it. It was lovely, and that woolly rhino, or whatever he was absolutely splendid. But I just wish I'd had a picture of his departure, because they took it at Whitemoor Lakes, and they sent the van down. He came down with the van, and they couldn't get it in. So in the end, he came down with a vehicle that he gets the canoes on the top of, and they put him on the top of that, and he sailed off down to Whitemoor Lakes. So
is it still there now, do you know?
I don't know. They got him in like an alcove or something in there. Because because that's where they found it.
Yes, it was. Wasn't
I mean, it was a very important find, apparently. You know, he is a very, you know, it's very important that there's a lot written up about him. So
that put Whitemoor Hay on the back map, didn't it? Because everybody was saying, "Where's Whitemoor Hay?" But obviously, being born here, obviously that's where we used to cycle. One of our cycle routes was Whitemoor Hay, and then along and then back over Kirkland's Crossing onto the A38.
Kirkland's Crossing, I've never heard that one.
That was where, you know where Leavesley's is now?
Yeah.
Well, it was a little lane off the A38 going across to Whitemoor Hay there.
Right.
Well, I called it Kirkland's because Kirkland's ran it.
It was the railway crossing. It was.
They opened
it. Did they have a hut there or something?
Yeah. It was a proper little crossing.
Yeah.
And we called it.
It's not the one that comes up round the back of the the Creme, is it? That one.
Yeah.
The one that's closed at the moment.
There was Kirkland's, then there was the Roddage one.
Yeah.
That's still there, isn't it? The Roddage.
Yeah, I've never been down. That's where the.
That's where Mrs. Smith used to run the Roddage one.
Yeah.
And then the one further up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's me done in terms of questions, unless there's anything else you particularly want to say.
No, I think we've done it all, haven't we?
Well, we've done.
Probably talk for hours.
No, it's good. We've done 42 minutes, which is great. That's fantastic.
So you'll be able to edit that and get something.
And get it down to about 5 minutes.
I mean, that's the thing.